This week we're talking about feelings and how to engage with them with our clients in helping situations. All right, so to begin, just want to have a kind of quick question time, primer time about why we do this in the first place. So sometimes helping, particularly counseling, can get kind of this bad rap because it's all mushy and gushy and we're getting to emotions a lot in that work, but it's actually really important. So why is that important? When we are feeling emotions, do we always know exactly what we're feeling? Do we understand them? For example, have you ever been in love? And if you were, how did you know you were in love? There are a lot of different things that can kind of connect to that. So what love actually feels like may be somewhat similar, but maybe different from different people. So the key part there is that you can identify it for yourself. Also, if you were in love, was it important to process those feelings with people around you? Did your feelings affect your behavior and choices? Is it simple? No. Feelings are powerful. They can influence our behaviors and our choices. At the same time, we aren't always consciously aware of them and we don't understand them. So talking about it can really help. There's actually a type of therapy that I really like called reality therapy that kind of describes the role of feelings in total human behavior. And if you see kind of on this car, you have front wheel drive, so these wheels can move and these back wheels cannot. So we can control our how we act, we can try to control what we think. We can't always control how we feel, and we can't control our physiology, kind of what our bodies are doing. And we usually are driven by our basic needs. But that's some more stuff about reality therapy. But I think the key is that feelings play a huge role in how we live our lives, but we can't always control them. So understanding them is really important. In particular, in helping situations, it's often really important to express negative emotions, ones like anger, sadness, fear, shame, pain, and hurt. Why? Well, these emotions tend to be among the more powerful, and they also are ones that people tend to try and hide because they feel vulnerable, showing that they are feeling kind of weak or sensitive about something. These are the negative emotions, and we tend to try and hide those. So expressing them in a helping relationship can be particularly positive for people. And again, they express those in those relationships when they feel safe. Here's some other kind of benefits for reflecting feeling. As mentioned before, it's important to think about our emotions, and so reflecting feelings and discussing feelings in a helping situation gets people to think critically about what they are feeling. Maybe they'll discover what they're feeling and they weren't sure before. It can be very validating for clients to talk about their feelings as if they matter. Also, using some of these skills that we're going to talk about, like reflecting feelings, it can model how to express emotions. And there are a lot of people who don't really know how to successfully express their emotions, and so then they get kind of like stuck and driven by their emotions and they don't know why. So expressing emotions tends to be very positive, and it can lead to acknowledging your feelings and then feeling like you have choices about them. However, it is hard to sometimes talk about emotions, in particular for the helper. Coming up with reflections can take work. The fact that it takes work shows the client, the helper, is dedicated. So this is a quote that I like, that emotions are often sensations rather than fully understood awareness. People often do not have words to symbolize feelings, so working together with helpers to label feelings helps clients identify what they're feeling. Really quick, some just quick cultural considerations, as always. Just keeping in mind that in some cultures it is discouraged to discuss feelings outside of your family. I believe that can be particularly prominent in Latino families, and also perhaps some cultures, some different Asian cultures. Also, men have as many emotions as women, but they are generally socialized to express fewer emotions than women. And so they may feel threatened if asked to say what they are feeling, or they may feel put on the spot or awkward because it's not super common for them to necessarily express their feelings. Some studies have actually shown that men may be more likely to think that they are angry when they're feeling an emotion, because anger is an acceptable male emotion, I guess, according to the culture. So just keeping that in mind, that working with different types of people, you may have to be thoughtful about how you get them to talk about their emotions and express them, but it can be helpful. But also, if they don't want to, they don't want to. So let's talk about the first big skill, reflecting feelings. A reflection of feelings is just a statement that explicitly labels what the client is feeling. And so it involves a few skills, some of which we've already worked on. First, you have to observe what's happening with the client. You're watching their body language. You're kind of observing and keeping track of other things that have kind of gone on in helping sessions before. You're listening to them. You're aware of what's going on with them, and you're listening to identify feelings in particular that they may be experiencing. And the reflection part is then sharing that observation of what you see or hear that they are feeling. And you share it as a reflection. So let's break that down. Again, a reflection is a very simple statement to just acknowledge that a feeling is there. So this is an example where the client is saying, I'm so upset. If I fail this test, my whole future is ruined. I'm such a failure. A very simple reflection would be to key on one of those feeling words and just say, the helper would say, you feel upset in response to him. Or, you feel like you are failing. Notice I'm not saying you are a failure. I'm not reflecting you are a failure, which he says he is. I'm saying you feel like a failure. We're highlighting that they feel this way. We're not saying that is the case, but he feels like a failure. Or you can make it a little bit more robust and have a reflection of feeling with also some content. What does that look like? You are upset because there are consequences if you fail this test. So you're taking the feeling that he said and also tying it to the content that he said. And so you can practice this in conversations with others, either just saying the simple feeling word or saying what they're feeling and why they say they're feeling that way. Sometimes, however, we can also do a tentative reflection of feeling. So what does that mean? Sometimes clients are telling us something, but they aren't really putting a feeling word to it. Or they're saying they feel one thing, but we think it's possible that they could also be feeling something else. These guesses about what they could be feeling, but they're not explicitly saying, are going to be based on what we see from the client, what we hear, what we know about them. So we're using those observation skills. So you would tentatively offer up a reflection. And, in doing this, you're kind of guessing, do you feel this way? And if you're wrong, the client can always correct you. So that's fine. As long as you put it in a kind of tentative fashion, like I've said here, I'm wondering if you feel angry. You've told me how upset and sad you are about this, but I'm wondering if you're also really angry. Or is there a possibility that you feel frightened? You're mentioning all this anxiety, but it seems like you're really frightened about something happening. Or I find myself curious if you feel nervous about this. You haven't mentioned any feeling words, but you keep talking about all this prep that you're doing for this big presentation, and you keep mentioning it, and so I'm wondering, are you feeling kind of nervous? If they're done in a tentative way that I'm wondering if, I find myself curious about, it sounds like you feel, that's not a definitive statement. It's tentative, so they can always correct you if you're wrong. So let's give an example. So the same one before, this is a guy who's talking about being in school. He's worried about this test, right? And he thinks that if he fails it, his whole future is going to be ruined. Usually one little thing like that is not going to ruin your whole future. So he's feeling a lot of anxiety, a lot of emotions, maybe not thinking about it as logically, so he's just feeling a lot of emotion right now. So he says again, I'm so upset. If I fail this test, my whole future is ruined. I'm such a failure. Going back to, again, that simple reflection from before, you could just say, you feel upset. But you could also say, I wonder if there's some other emotions there that he hasn't expressed yet. So the tentative reflection would be, yeah, and I'm wondering if you're also afraid of what feeling would mean. Has he said he's afraid? No. But maybe there's enough evidence to suggest that he could be. Maybe he is, maybe he isn't. We'll see after we say that. Or we could say, is it possible that you're also feeling some fear? And again, he can respond to that however he wishes, but I've said it in a very affirming, non-confrontive way, but just wondering, hey, I'm wondering if you're feeling this too. And if he is, that allows him to talk about it. Maybe he hasn't identified that he actually is really afraid. And by bringing that up, he can start to process that emotion. Another thing about reflection of feelings is that you can use the client's exact words, like we did in that simple example of saying, you're upset. He said is upset. I said you were upset. That's like a mirror, same thing. Or you can paraphrase by using similar words. So what is a similar word to being upset? You are frustrated. Frustrated and being upset can be similar, slightly different, but slightly similar. So paraphrasing can be helpful because, one, it adds a little color and flavor. You're not always just repeating them like a robot. Sometimes if you always use a client's exact words, it can really start to feel robotic, so using other words can be helpful. Also, sometimes bringing in a similar feeling word could actually be a better fit for them. It just could give them sort of new room to explore. So let's look at a simple example of that. Client says, I'm so frustrated that I can't figure this out. Mirroring the client's words, of course, is he said frustrated, so I say, you feel frustrated. Or, if I wanted to mix it up a bit and paraphrase them, I could say, it sounds like you feel exasperated. Exasperation and frustration are similar, slightly different, but pretty similar. So, another tip when it comes to doing these reflections of feelings is learn some feeling words, so that you feel kind of confident and comfortable. And also, all these words, again, they're similar, but they have slightly different meanings, and sometimes there's something very powerful about finding the right feeling word for what's going on with you. So this is just kind of a quick little feelings chart, but I really recommend, just in general, if you want to be a helper and to prepare for your final projects, print off a list somewhere of feeling words and start practicing using different ones in your daily life. It can be helpful for your clients. Just to kind of wrap up with this reflection of feeling piece, that the intention for the helper is always to identify, sometimes intensify feelings, help the client really get in touch with that feeling, to encourage catharsis by sharing a feeling. Sometimes there's release, to clarify, to instill hope, and to encourage self-control. Because another thing about naming your feeling is once you know that you feel it, you're kind of in charge of it. You can't change your feelings, but you can change what you do. So the sooner, again, you know that feeling, what you're having, the sooner you can make intentional decisions with your behaviors in response to that feeling. When we don't know what we're feeling, we just kind of go with what we're feeling and we can act like chaotic. Another thing to keep in mind is that there are possible client reactions. A lot of clients will feel cared about and heard and listened to when you validate and reflect their feelings. However, some may experience that negatively. Some may feel really uncomfortable getting in touch with their feelings. Some of them may feel seen by you or watched by you as opposed to understood. It can just be a very anxiety-inducing place. So if you notice a client is getting tense when you talk about emotions, maybe just like kind of pull back lightly, but go back maybe the next session or 20 minutes later, or just kind of ease into it. Some clients will be very comfortable talking about feelings, others won't, but regardless, it is beneficial. If you can identify feelings with your clients, it usually is beneficial. So, next skill, disclosures. So, disclosures of feeling are something that the helper does, and it's a time when the helper reveals a feeling they've had or hypothesize that they might have in a similar situation. I've also kind of sometimes disclosed if someone shares something that another client has talked about. Maybe I haven't experienced that, but I might say, I haven't really experienced that, but I had another client who experienced something similar, and it sounds like that can be a common feeling to have. So the purpose of disclosures is to normalize the client's feelings or to help them discover what they're feeling and if they're not sure of it yet. And I'll show examples in a minute. But always the rationale for doing this is to help the client. So if someone's talking about something that you've experienced and gone through and you remember what it felt like to go through that, if you disclose what that felt like for you going through this similar instance, You should put the focus right back on the client immediately, not dive into your own stuff and details, if that makes sense. It's just to clarify that this can be a normal response. So here's an example. So let's say that Brian tells his Counselor Michelle that he's been feeling depressed since his dad died. So a disclosure response could be Michelle saying, you know, I haven't lost my dad, but when I lost my mom, I struggled for quite a while. I think losing a parent is hard for most of us. And so notice that, you know, she hasn't lost a dad, so she's highlighting she didn't go through the same thing that he did. By disclosing that, she normalizes, hey, losing a parent is hard. And most likely, Brian probably feels comforted by that, you know, he's not some freak of nature experiencing this weird emotional thing. He's normal, and it's hard, because life is hard. Here's another example. So Sharon, who's in her 70s, tells her helper Dominique that she is uncertain of what to do with her retirement and how she will find purpose in her life. You know, assuming this were them, if you look at Dominique, she's not in her 70s, she's much younger, so she's not dealt with those kind of particular life challenges yet. How does Dominique provide support through disclosure here? She says something like, you know, Sharon, I haven't had to face retirement yet, but I imagine, she's hypothesizing, I imagine that most people feel uncertain at that stage. In fact, some of my other retiree clients have expressed similar feelings. So again, a simple disclosure to say, hey, I see you, I hear you. I think that's pretty normal. So reflection of feelings and disclosures are two tools. And then the last one I'm going to talk about today are asking open questions and probes about feelings. So if you want a client to explore their feelings, you're probably going to have to use skills to probe for feelings. So you're going to have to ask specific questions to get at that, because we are not socialized to have conversations with different people and then just start talking about our feelings. We don't do that for the most part. Unless you're, you know, a group of friends that are really close, we don't just talk to people about how we feel. So open-ended questions getting at feelings can allow clients to explore their thoughts and feelings best and start saying some of those things that you can start reflecting. However, if you ask a probe to get at what a client is feeling, it should be connected to a topic that you guys have already discussed in helping sessions. So if a client is coming in and talking about how they are dealing with the loss of their father, like Brian did before, it would be very weird to suddenly start asking questions about how he felt as a high schooler, unless something about him and his feelings in high school have come up. So you want to stick to the topics discussed. And once you get the client talking about their feelings, you can start reflecting their feelings back to them. I do encourage you to look at Exhibit 9.4 on page 197 of your book for more details about this, for a little bit more concrete info. Again, these are skills I'm going to want to see in your final project. So let's look at an example of how questions and probes can be useful and lead back to some of these other skills. So let's say we have the client and the helper, and the client is discussing, you know, now that we are divorced, I find myself questioning whether or not I should date again. It would be a whole new world for me. So just from hearing that, we know the client is recently divorced, so she's going through kind of this new phase of life. So the counselor asks, picking up on the fact that she's talking about dating, she asks a probe. So when you think about dating again, what feelings come up for you? Very simple, to the point probe for feelings. Client responds, oh my goodness, I don't know. I'm wondering if someone would really want me, I guess, or if it's worth the effort. And so then the client does a kind of tentative reflection. It sounds like you may be feeling a bit nervous, question mark. So the probe led to the reflection of feeling, and then the client says, yeah, I guess I am. I hadn't thought about that. And the counselor says, when I went through my divorce, the thought of dating again seemed very daunting, but step by step, it got easier. Notice that's a disclosure. So she asked the client a question about a feeling, reflected that feeling, and is now disclosing that she has felt something similar, and that can be very normal. And the client says, yeah, I guess I just have to take it one day at a time and just kind of do what feels right for me. And the counselor might ask, Do you have a sense of what might feel right for you to do right now? So that's another probe. She's picking up on the client saying, you know, I want to do what feels right for me. But in a helping relationship, help her understand, what does it mean to feel right? Like, what are you looking for? What feelings are you aware of that would let you know what choices you want to make? So right back into a probe. So this could keep going, but hopefully you can see how probes can lead to more the client talking about their feelings, which can lead to reflection of feelings and sometimes disclosures. But it's how you want to get the conversation focused around what the client is feeling. Now, there are a lot of common difficulties for new helpers with this stuff. You know, it might feel kind of nerve-wracking to discuss feelings, particularly intense negative ones with clients. You know, we mentioned earlier that some of those negative emotions like anger and shame and fear are some of the most important feelings for clients to express and discuss. But they're also hard for us. So becoming more comfortable with emotions takes time, and that's why we practice. You also might feel nervous about the consequences of encouraging a client to connect with their feelings. You know, when we're talking to people about feelings, we're inviting them into a space to be aware of what they're feeling. And so someone who's carrying a particularly hard feeling might start crying in session or might really get in touch with their anger, and you'll see this, you know, this kind of emotion in the room with you, and that, you know, can make you feel nervous. But it's okay. Take a deep breath. You know, they wouldn't be expressing that feeling unless you were a safe space to begin with. And like so, you know, you might feel nervous about your own feelings. Maybe a client talking about their feelings will trigger something in you. So that's why it's important to be aware of yourself and learn how to manage that in a session so you can remain there for your clients. And also very, very common, you know, you might struggle at first to find the right feeling word, to find the most salient feeling. But that's okay. This is all a learning process of learning more about how people feel things and what people feel and what different feelings are. So practice, 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 but this is very rewarding stuff. Being able to communicate with people about emotions, I think, is a very powerful skill that will serve you in a lot of ways. Super important in a helping relationship, but super important in a lot of other places too. So you have a discussion board this week and a quiz. Good luck, and again, these are going to be the really important skills, and if you have more questions and need more examples about this stuff, please feel free to let me know. This is the part of the course where it's like really hard that we're not meeting in person, so I am trying to figure out what is the best way to talk about this stuff with you. Also, midterms are going to be posted this week once I get your journals graded. Good luck, take care, and I'll see you guys soon.